Did you see the spa they have here? I can't wait to have a facial and a pedicure.
Frogs, they belong to a bigger group. They belong to a group of animals called the amphibians. Here in North Carolina, we have 88 species of amphibians, and we also have the highest salamander diversity in the world, which a lot of people don't realize, but we have a lot of different species of salamanders. These salamanders make up a huge biomass. The biomass is basically the weight of all those animals put together. There was a wetland here in North Carolina where they looked at it and there were 3 tons of amphibians in that wetland. That is a lot of biomass. These are a very, very important part of our ecosystem.
Thank you, Barbara and Terry, for putting this together. And I do want to echo one thing that was said about not killing snakes. I think that's one reason why I kind of started my love for being out in the environment. My mother's an anthropologist. She actually did a lot of her work in the mountains on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Actually filled up her car with gas where they found Osama bin Laden. And so I had the sort of mother that had the Stacy Keach approach of go outside and don't come back until you're bleeding somehow. So I grew up in the southeast part, off at East Boulevard, and in the southeast part of the county, certainly getting out and enjoying getting out in nature. And even recently, regarding the snakes, we were putting our boat in the water on Mountain Island Lake, and there was a beautiful, beautiful water snake. I don't even think it was a poisonous one. I think it was just a northern brown snake. Crawled out from under the engine and onto the pavement, and this was at the launch at Access Road there. And it was beautiful, and we took pictures of it, and we tried to encourage it to slither away so it didn't get run over. And boy, there were 3 people, probably in their late teens, who were just giddy with excitement that they could kill a snake. It was sad. It was one of those things where you're ready to just about start a fight to make sure that snake gets into the grass and gets away from a few morons. So the biggest and most worrisome one is on Mountain Island Lake, and I see we have a couple of Mountain Island Lakers here. These are river bends ponds. So those are propped up 80 feet high, and it's tough to get a perspective. I will say what's interesting is in other parts of the lake, I have tended to see more amphibians than around the places where I went sampling as we were doing our sampling to build up our lawsuit. These ponds are unlined. They've been around since starting in 1950. They've built them and expanded them for a number of decades. But you can see also, if you're familiar with Mountain Island Lake, the sandbar down below where there's a volleyball net to give you some sort of a perspective. But those hold back, I think there it's 830 million gallons of coal ash. To give you a comparison to the Dan River spill that happened recently, that was about 1/4 of the size.
Okay, it's great to be here and talk to everybody, and thanks so much to the organizers for inviting me. So I do want to talk a little bit today about these disappearing and declining frogs, of course, and in particular the role of disease and are there any potential cures. Okay, as we've heard eloquently from Steve, we've got the frogs. Here's a tree frog from Panama and one from New Guinea. And the salamanders, there's an endemic salamander in West Virginia and Western Virginia, the cow knob salamander, and also the green salamander. But as also was mentioned, we've got anywhere from 1/3 up to 40% of all amphibian species are now vulnerable or threatened with extinction. And so there's a little bit of trouble in paradise. And of course, habitat loss is a great threat to amphibians. We can't forget that. Here's some primary rainforests in Panama being cleared in January 2010. And those rainforest clearing rates seem to be going on pretty much unabated as far as the latest research shows. But what I want to talk about today is this fungal disease which is threatening amphibians. And it seems to be part of this sort of global epidemic of emerging fungal diseases, which is not just affecting amphibians, but affecting lots of other plants and animals, including some of our crop plants. So this was featured a couple of years ago in the journal Nature, which is probably considered the primary, most prestigious journal in science. And it happened to put one of the frog species that's threatened on the cover. So it turns out we've worked on that particular frog species, mainly with collaborators. It's the mountain yellow-legged frog. It occurs in these sort of pristine, high-elevation ponds out in California in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And so there used to be a thriving series of ponds filled with these mountain yellow-legged frogs. But then the chytrid fungus arrived, and you'd walk up to a pond, and it would look like that. So that's sort of the image that Terry used for her graphic. So just complete extinction of the frogs in that case. So you have a naive frog population, the fungus invades, and that's usually what happens. Okay, just a quick idea of what it's doing. So I just wanted to show on the left is sort of normal frog skin, and on the right is infected frog skin. So you can see that's just, on the right it's just packed with the fungal organism. You can see the sporangia, you can see the spores within the sporangia, and this is all happening on the first several layers of the skin. So as Steve talked about, there's a lot going on across the skin in amphibians. The oxygen exchange, the ion exchange. So that's completely disrupted, so you get ion imbalance. They have problems with potassium regulation, so they end up pretty much having heart failure when that happens.